Review this lecture after reading Chapter 4, Editing and Understanding Movies. Use the film grammar sheet in Module 6 to aid in the note-taking process. Journal Question 5. Why is mise-en-scène important to a film? Consider what we've accomplished in the last 2 weeks. Think about how the director's visual style is communicated through the mise-en-scène. I can't wait to read your journal responses. Let's begin editing Part 1. Although not formally assigned, students are strongly encouraged to watch The Cutting Edge, The Magic of Movie Editing. Presently, the entire film is available on YouTube. Why edit? In this lecture, we'll cover styles and techniques that establish the rules and conventions of editing as a language in film. But have you ever stopped to think about what editing is exactly? Editing, or cutting, is the joining of two separate shots so that the first shot is instantaneously replaced by the second. The finished version of the film is also called a cut. Cut is the grammar word used when breaking down a scene into a collection of shots. Medium shot, cut to a close-up, cut to a long shot. Did you know before a film was edited digitally, editing was the act of cutting and taping or gluing shots together? This is where the term cut comes from in relation to editing. You'll see early editing equipment here, a film splicer for cutting the frames of film, and what's called a flatbed for looking at reels of film. Editing styles make up the organization of a film. We'll focus on classical cutting and continuity editing in this lecture. An editing style is like a language in film. It dominates the way a film is put together. Before editing, we have to travel back to the mid-1890s in France. The Lumiere brothers bring their short films to the public. This establishes the social and cultural component of film. The Cinemagraph allowed the Lumiere brothers to bring their films to a public audience. It was a camera, developer, and projector machine all in one. An overview of film before editing. The mid-1890s in France, the Lumiere brothers invent the Cinemagraph. Their early films contained no editing or camera movement. They were single-shot recordings or sequence shots. The duration was one roll of film, 1 to 2 minutes, and the duration of the shots in the event were equal. The Lumiere brothers' contribution to editing, even though their films didn't contain editing, by creating a public interest in film, they plant the seeds of change. One budding filmmaker was especially inspired by the Lumiere brothers. His name was Georges Méliès. Whether he knew it or not, Georges Méliès created an editing technique called cutting to continuity. Watch A Trip to the Moon to see one of the first examples of this editing technique. Georges Méliès created episodic films by connecting sequences. Editing and camera placement still based on live theater, the camera is stationary outside of the action, and the cutting to continuity is similar to a curtain coming down and opening in a new location. Cutting to continuity is a technique used in most fiction films today. Giannetti says, "It's a shorthand existing of time-honored conventions." Cutting to continuity tries to preserve the fluidity of an event without literally showing all of it. Time. Editing frees the world of film from the time constraints of the real world. 120 minutes of film time can equal 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, 1,000 years. Cutting to continuity can take a long event and condense it into a few shots. For our next editing technique, we travel to America. Edwin S. Porter made Life of an American Fireman in The Great Train Robbery in 1903. Porter used editing to create parallel action or cross-cutting. Shots are not linear. Shot B does not pick up where shot A left off. Instead, they're linked by the continuity of an idea. Shot A shows robbers holding up a train station, and then shot B, police on horseback. Space. Parallel action implies that action is taking place in two separate locations at the same time. By cross-cutting between the police and the robber, the viewer links the two sequences and parallel action takes shape. Techniques. So far, we've examined two early but influential techniques, cutting to continuity and parallel action. In the beginning, editing wasn't a full-fledged film language. Think of editing techniques like words. When cut together, they create a language. Classical cutting. D.W. Griffith makes Birth of a Nation in 1915. He's known as the father of filmmaking in America. He begins editing within a scene to vary dramatic intensity and expand visual information, juxtaposing long shots, medium shots, close-ups, etc., varying the lengths of shots and shifting the attention within a scene. Innovation in editing. D.W. Griffith expands upon the existing editing techniques of the day to create a full-fledged language. At its heart, classical cutting is continuity editing. It becomes a way for Hollywood to streamline the process of cutting a film together. Continuity editing, a style of editing designed to be invisible, functions to move the story forward without calling attention to itself. Classical cutting is the term used for Hollywood's application of continuity editing, especially in the Golden Age. The master shot technique. First, the scene is shot in its entirety from a long shot. Then the action is repeated a number of times using medium shots, close-ups, etc. Without a master shot, editors may not have adequate footage. We'll cover some more techniques in continuity editing. Cutting on action is when the action begins in one shot and ends in another. Cutting on dialogue, motivated by whoever is talking or listening. Think back to the over-the-shoulder shots that we saw in week 2. And cutting on glance. The edit follows the eyes of the character. Again, shot, reverse shot, creating a point of view. Rules of continuity. Believe it or not, cutting a film together is a rather complicated process. The average Hollywood film shoots over 200 hours of footage. It's necessary to shoot a scene from numerous angles and positions. The 30-degree rule. The angle and/or position of the camera must vary at least 30 degrees between shots. So here we have a long shot, a medium shot, and a close-up. If we edited these 3 shots together, it would be fluid, smooth, and invisible. The 180-degree rule. To maintain visual continuity, the camera must stay on one side of this invisible 180-degree arc. If the camera crosses the line, it causes a break in continuity from shot to shot. Jump cut, a noticeable break or skip in continuity. A jump cut happens when the 180-degree or 30-degree rules are violated. A jump cut is an undesirable effect in continuity editing and classical cutting. Jump cut example from the movie Breathless. Juxtaposing a close-up next to another close-up will result in a jump cut. The transition between shots will be noticeable. Again, this is undesirable in classical cutting and continuity editing. Next week, we'll look at editing styles that are in opposition to classical cutting and continuity editing. The assigned film will apply to both editing lectures. Tsotsi, a South African film directed by Gavin Hood, released in 2005, will be the assigned film for editing Part 1 and Part 2. Students can choose from the following questions. How is editing used to inform the viewer about Totsy's childhood? Or, how is continuity editing used in Totsy? Make sure to give specific examples. Remember, this is an analysis of the editing. Films featured in this lecture. Students are encouraged to explore these films: The Cutting Edge, Lumiere Brothers' first films, A Trip to the Moon, The Great Train Robbery, Life of an American Fireman, Birth of a Nation, and Breathless. Until next time, have a great week.